fun and exciting episode for you tonight on nurses and nursing burnout. Right after this intro.
Just imagine it's jamming.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh no, that's our
I got caught too. I was like, man, we got a damn commenter already up in here.
Actually, I show 5 watching on YouTube already.
Montana Horseman.
Well, and I sent a bunch out earlier, so hopefully it'll keep going.
Cool. No, better put my phones on.
How much longer do I have?
Probably like 5 seconds.
All right. I guess we're good.
There we go.
All right. Well, thank you guys. As most of you don't know, I am a registered nurse and worked as a nurse for almost 20 years. And tonight we are talking about nurses and what they give to our community and what they go through. So we have a very fun and wonderful episode. Next to me, I have very close friend Shanice and her husband Todd, who are all both nurses, as well as across we have Mayra and Amber, and then my husband Nathan. And behind the scenes we have Hannah and Tanaki and Daniel. So thank
Full
you guys.
house.
We
Hi
got-
guys, you can just hear us.
So
That was definitely Tanaki.
like, thanks, Nate.
It's what you get for going to Texas.
Leaving us. So a little bit about nursing. I started as a CNA, worked myself through nursing school, and then went on and started as a cardiac nurse on 3 Tower, a Surgery Plus, shortly after that, about 4 years later, and was there for almost 15 years. So, and I did that for, I feel like, forever.
So what was, I mean, you said that you were there up until a certain point. What was it burnout or was it other things that led you to leave the nursing profession?
You know, honestly, I probably would have stayed forever. I loved my job. I loved the people I worked with. What actually pushed me out was COVID. A lot of when they started telling us you couldn't do your religious exemption, you had to have the shots, everything in my soul just said, I just won't do that. And so I figured an exit plan. And here I am growing weed, selling weed, and not expensive, going from one to the other, so.
You know, I've often said, being in the cannabis industry for so long, I've had a couple of people come to us and they like, look, I need at least $35 an hour. And I told them that if we had to go to $35 an hour, I'd probably hire nurses all day long. They understand chemistry a lot better. They understand biology a lot better. They understand patient care, you know, so that translates probably to a better bud tender. But fortunately, you know, we've got great bud tenders and we've also got great nurses. So.
Yes, we do.
So, I mean, for the guests here, you know, we've obviously got the conversation about surrounding nursing burnout. But, Shanice, you've been involved in different structures of hospital care. Do you see one leaning more towards burnout than the other, whether that be dealing with geriatrics, whether it be cardiac or emergency room?
No, I don't think it's departmental. I think that it is, but I do think floor nurses are more likely to be burned out, or nurses that are working on the floor versus administration or home health or clinic nurses. They have a better work-life balance. I work in care management now. Prior to that, I worked in home health. I worked in doctor's office nursing, and so I would have to say, but the most burned out I ever was as a nurse was when I worked the floor in a nursing home.
Okay.
Just because I had so many patients to just me, CNAs often called off, and they didn't replace them. You did both jobs.
Sure.
They'd pull there were supposed to be 2 nurses per unit, and they would pull a nurse to another unit, so you would do both nursing jobs. And I got a urinary infection just because I wasn't allowed to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I literally couldn't get off the floor to go to the bathroom.
I mean, and
So-
think about that. I mean, nurses getting, infections and going through medical problems just to take care of patients. I mean, that's pretty
That's
insane.
really common. I worked with a nurse on the inpatient floor in orthopedics. We were always so busy, and she actually went septic, urosepsis, from having urinary tract infections. And you just don't have the time to even get a drink of water or to go to the bathroom or to even care for yourself. It's tough.
So, how do you prepare and deal with that mentally to get up every day and, face that as a person and as a nurse? I mean,
You do it for your patients, and for your coworkers. You build like a huge team. And you know that if you don't show up, that they're going to be suffering, and that they're going to be hurting. And so you go in every day because you want to make their day better. And you know that if you're not there, they're going to maybe have a absolutely terrible day, and they might not get that 30-minute lunch break in their 12-hour shift.
yep.
Yeah. And the way that you do it also is by taking care of yourself as much as you can with your own self-care activities, making sure that you're exercising or going for a bike ride or playing music or reading books, or doing things to refill on your time off. And when you're not doing that, that's when you end up burned out. When you're burnout is consistent stress over time
Sure, yeah.
at work.
So, I mean, Todd, we got to pick on you a little bit. You're obviously in a sort of a female-dominated profession.
Yeah.
How do you see that from the male perspective? I mean, and the burnout that you see. Do you see a lot more burnout within the male constituents or the female constituents?
I think both sides of the fence. People get burnt out, and it's because of what everybody just talked about. You're busy. It's a different busy. I grew up in the labor industry, and then it's kind of funny is after my second hernia surgery, the doctor who did both surgeries, he said, "Boy, you got to do something else. You got to." And I was like, "Well, what else am I going to do? I mean, this is all I know." He said, "You're bright enough. You could become a nurse. Go to nursing school." And I was like, I don't think he's ever met me. I'm not that bright. And about a year later, I guess, I applied for LPN school. I got in, and I'm an LPN. I've stayed an LPN. I'm really happy with it. But it's different than the labor industry in the sense that you work hard and you physically suffer. I got 2 hernia surgeries, and I mean, I liked what I did, but it was terrible pay, and like I said, 2 hernia surgeries. And then you go into nursing, and it's not really labor intensive in the sense of the labor industry, but you're focused always on, just like May said, on the patient. And I've kind of been in, I don't know, I don't like to get attached to the people I work with. I just avoid that, and all except for my wife. And
That's true.
but then you put everything into the patient, and it kind of, after a while, you just don't know how to deal with it anymore.
You lose yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're so focused on caring for other people, you forget to care for yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and
Yes.
then you come home and you got your kids and you got your spouse.
Yeah.
And you have everybody else that you have to take care of, your dogs, and you still
Yeah.
got to sweep your floor and do your dishes and get your laundry done and make sure everything's ready for the next day and hopefully pack yourself a lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, you feel like you're pouring from an empty cup eventually,
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's been more recent. I think as nursing and healthcare has evolved, I think that the structure of nursing has created this, because you used to have the support that you needed to have a fulfilling job, and you could go to work every day with your team. You'd have a reasonable patient load. I'm a lucky nurse. I've never been a floor nurse. So I grew up in the procedural world. I started as a surgical tech and then went back through school and became a circulator in the OR, and then moved to pre and post. So as a nurse in my career, I've been blessed. I've seen and have empathized with nurses on the floor, and I've always tried to bring them over to the procedural world, where it's just you take care of one patient at a time. So floor nursing and everything that floor nurses do, I think with COVID, just our world today, back in the day, patients were thankful for nurses, and they really appreciated the care that they received. Violence towards nurses has grown significantly, from not only from patients but also patient families since COVID, and it doesn't look like it's decreasing. And there's so much self-entitlement that they don't understand that you're giving your all. You have maybe 6 or 7 patients, and the CNA called off. So I feel that it's evolved the structure of nursing and what nurses have to go through. And unfortunately, I think that that's an entire healthcare system issue, and it's something that's not going away. So I know that a lot of people are leaving nursing, and I believe you have some pretty significant statistics on that.
So I know this isn't, the nurse's problem, and it's definitely not a justification. Do you think people are just getting frustrated with the quality of care that they're receiving? Because oftentimes the doctors just really
Definitely.
don't care. They just,
Absolutely. And everything's electronic, right? And so, everything's in one place. So patients also, they do get frustrated, because if it's in the computer, why don't you know that about me
Yeah.
already?
yeah.
And so, yeah, I totally think that the whole healthcare system, patients are frustrated, workers are frustrated.
I think it started, it's become such a huge business. It is such a moneymaker, trillions of dollars. That's what really kind of changed things, I think. And now they are always looking at productivity and how much money they can make, and the bottom line and the dollar. They're not looking at the acuity of patients when they're looking at nurse to patient ratio, which they should be looking at. They're not looking at what they should be looking at, which is, we want to provide these nurses with a good job where they're happy and that they are able to deliver good care, and we want to provide these patients with exceptional care. The way that we can do that is to make sure that everybody is healthy and happy. We have good nursing ratios, and that all went away when they started looking at the dollar, looking at the bottom line, and looking at money and just money.
Yeah. So instead of compassionate care,
Yeah.
you were looking at corporate greed.
Yeah, and these people who are making the decisions, they've never worked on the floor. They have never worked a single day in the job. They have no clue what it's like. And, and they're making these decisions just based on money, monetary,
Yeah.
and the decisions they often make are terrible decisions.
Well, and I think a lot of that comes all the way back with insurance reimbursement and CMS and all of that, because like we all see the healthcare systems are getting bigger, and they have to. You can't have that small hospital anymore, because they can't survive. They have to have the power of a bigger system in order to be able to survive a market and actually get supplies at a decent cost from different distributors, and to have that power through insurance companies for reimbursement. I mean, there's just so many aspects of healthcare that all trickles down to the patient.
It does,
They
and,
have to
and,
be
and the
able-
caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be able to absorb the losses.
Yeah.
Small hospitals can't
Can't.
absorb losses
Yeah.
that are, say, United Healthcare doesn't want to pay.
Yep.
For a patient that did receive the services and the supplies. Their workers were paid for the services rendered, but then the insurance company doesn't want to pay the bill. So the hospital then ends up having to absorb some of that cost. And they can't do that as a small rural hospital.
No.
When you're barely squeaking by, as a small little hospital nobody paying their bills for a couple of weeks can really put a damper on staff and everything else.
And a lot of them are going under.
Well, and I think you hit on something a little bit earlier. I mean, we pay attention to, student-teacher ratio, but we don't really pay attention to, nurse ratio or anything else like that. But we also had a commenter out there, Alana Peterson. She was a CNA, or is a CNA, and, she spoke on the fact that, CNAs, really, there's a lot of burnout amongst them as well.
Huge.
And can you guys give us a little bit of a breakdown between, there's a lot of alphabet soup when it comes to the medical terminology, CNA, LPN, RN, BSN.
What
There's
are
also MAs and there's
Techs.
PCAs.
PCAs.
And there's NPs and PAs and MDs and DOs. And I mean, you're right.
It's a lot.
CNAs are nursing assistants, certified nursing assistants.
They're the backbone of any
Nurse.
medical facility.
That's
Yes.
true.
Without them, nothing happens.
The straight worker bee of the medical
The
bee.
worker.
Yes,
Yep.
they're the backbone.
They have, I would say, the hardest physical job daily.
Yeah.
And then there's the PCA, which is a personal care attendant. They often work in assisted living facilities that don't require certifications
Okay.
or in home health or home care positions.
Not quite as heavy lifting.
Yep. And just
Well,
don't
depends
carry
on
the
what
same certification as a certified nursing assistant.
You see them oftentimes, out shopping for people and stuff like that.
Yep.
That's kind of some
Yep.
of the stuff that they do. Help people stay a little more independent until they reach an age that they need hospice or something of that nature.
And
Or-
I think on the floors, like, I'm not sure, but the ratio of CNAs on a floor typically is significantly less than nurses. And so they're definitely having to support even more patients. I don't know the ratio.
I think when I was on the cardiac floor, each nurse would have 4 to 5 patients. Each CNA would have 10 to 12.
Wow.
Yeah, and actually, most of the time, you only had one CNA for the whole floor.
Yeah.
And some days, no
Yeah.
CNA.
Yeah.
So the issue is they're just not paid enough. That job is really tough. It is really hard on your back. And
Yeah.
just, it's physically a really hard job. And it used to be that it was one of the better paid jobs.
Sure.
When I first got my CNA, I got it because it was really good paid, paying. And now you can make just as much, if not more, at McDonald's.
You can.
And so why would you put your body and your mental health and through all of that stress of being a floor CNA and sometimes being the only CNA for, 40 patients?
Wow.
Why would you do that? Nobody wants to do that for shit pay.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you just can't find CNAs anymore. It's so hard. to
Well, and that
find
sort of
CNAs.
trickles up to you guys. I mean, if you
does.
don't have the CNAs, then obviously
Then
you've
you're
got to
doing
go
2
twice to
jobs.
work, and you're doing
That's right.
everything that you need to
So
do.
now you're doing
So
the
your
bed,
burnout
you're
comes
giving
quicker.
The bath,
Yep.
You're brushing their teeth.
Yep.
You're getting them walked. You're making sure that they got their medications. You're giving them, making sure that all the physical therapies or any other therapies that need to happen is scheduled
Are
and done
happening.
properly, and visiting hours are correct, and all the people that come in and out, and food's delivered. you
Taking
become-
food trays
And
away.
and
become-
feed
Doing
and feeding the
vitals.
feeders.
Yeah.
I mean, and so it just you're wearing multiple hats. You're not getting paid anymore, but you're doing two people's jobs, 3 people's jobs some days because you might be doing the therapist's job too. And it's just, and you're not getting paid anymore for that. And you're expected to do way more in a 12-hour period with less staff.
They used to have the CNAs on night shift when I worked at a facility, cleaning the facility, doing all the laundry, cleaning all the bathrooms, answering call lights, doing the get-ups, folding silverware. It was just, they gave them so many, they wanted them constantly busy doing something.
Sure. Yeah. Which obviously leads to them burning out a lot faster, and then it's just a compounding problem. So do you see a lot of hospitals being sort of top heavy with administrators and sort of not having enough support staff to really do that? Is that part of the problem, or is it fairly balanced?
I think that like personally, my view is lack of support from that administration. So I feel that with healthcare becoming such a business, they're all run like businesses, and you have usually one CNO, and then you have all these other administrators. That one CNO is supposed to be, your go-to for the entire facility, your nursing leader. That's not enough. So you have one CNO, and then you have your managers, your directors, and all of that. Well, it can work if you have strong leaders, but what I've recognized in my career and through Arizona and Montana is a lot of time your leaders that are in the executive suites are not vested in the facility or the community. They're vested in getting another notch in their resume to move to the next
That
step
makes
forward.
sense.
So you don't have that floor support. They're there to make the numbers good and move on.
Yep.
So when you can get into a facility where you have vested leaders that are vested in the community, and that's when it makes the world of difference. It's getting those people in. And with bigger healthcare systems, that's hard to do.
Sure, yeah.
You don't have that community-based team. They bring people in from everywhere. And it doesn't work if you don't have that support for your frontline team. So
Well, and if there isn't the investment,
Yeah.
the personal, emotional investment.
exactly. Yep.
So do you guys see that with, there's been, especially during COVID, the use of traveling nurses quite a bit. How much does that really disrupt, the flow of a hospital to have somebody come in from out of state, not really invested and just work for a couple of weeks and flow out? I mean, does that cause you guys any issues or?
They're lifesavers.
They are.
Okay.
And you have two types of people who travel. You have travelers who, they want to go see the world. They're excellent nurses. And you're just so thankful when you get those. And then you have other travelers. It's because
They couldn't make it somewhere else.
they can't find a home that fits them.
Yeah.
This is a nice way to say it. But I always think that travelers have been a godsend.
They have. They fill a spot that is much needed.
It does. There is, though, some incivility amongst nurses who work there in the hospital, and the pay disparity, and some causes
Yes.
some hard feelings.
So the pay
Because how
disparity.
can you pay them to do the same job I'm doing, but not pay me what you're paying them?
Sure.
So there definitely, I've heard that. There seems to be, some hurt feelings about that with traveling nurses.
And I think what you're talking about, just for people who are not part of the nursing profession, is the fact that, let's just use round numbers. This isn't anybody's salary. A local nurse could make $35 an hour or $20 an hour. A traveler will come in at $100 an hour, and you're wondering, why are we short-staffed? We could have hired 2 more nurses for that amount of pay.
Yeah.
Right. Or you could have given us some incentive to pick up extra shifts.
Yeah.
When you're not offering incentive for us to work extra shifts, why would we?
Yeah.
But
So you're not
paying-
willing to
yeah.
pay us that incentive, and we're already working for you. We're already invested in your company, but you're willing to pay these guys, these big bucks to come in here who don't know anything about any of this. It gets frustrating. You don't want to pick up those extra shifts then if they're not going to give you any incentive to do it.
Sure. Well, and I think every one of you here have been in a supervisor role at some point or position at the hospitals. How hard is that for you to get a brand new person and have to train them over and over and over and over again, whereas you have a staff that knows their job very well and they can execute very well?
That's the thing too. Training costs a lot of money. So that also is costing them a lot. So I don't know are they really looking at that? If they really looked at the staff that they had and really invested in the staff that they had, the way that they should, they probably wouldn't be paying so much on travelers and on these stand-ins. And I'm sure they know, because that's all they care about is the bottom dollar. I'm sure they know how much they spend on them, but I don't think they realize how much less they could spend if they would just invest in their own employees that they already have there.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's simple things like when I worked in the pre-op and post-op for decades, we didn't get lunch on a regular basis, and it was expected that you worked until the patients were done, and you got lunch whenever that happened. And I got there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I would not get lunch until 4, 5 in the evening. Many times, my husband had brought lunch to the department for our team because I was like, "We're running our butts off. There's nobody's even gotten a chance to pee," and he'd come in with Little Caesars or homemade rice or whatever. Oh. I mean, there was a lot of just tons of times that we fit the bill, just my husband and I, to feed our entire department because they were not getting that break. And then, you know, you would see the OR team getting food brought in, but our department, like, oh, who cares, you know? And it's like, we just did 70 patients for you guys, got them ready and post-op.
Nobody's had a break, and
nobody's
we've been
had a
here
break,
for
and
10
nobody
hours.
cared. Yeah.
And
Thank
nobody
God
cares.
for Little Caesars.
I know. I don't know. Jimmy John's and Little Caesars were my go-to for the team because
Absolutely.
yeah, and that's just one of those little things like Mara was talking about. And like I said, there are that comes from above. So when they tell you that, you know, no lunches for teams, none of this stuff, that's from your leadership. So I just, having that strong leadership, I don't know, it bridges so many gaps for burnout because they have your back. So to me, like, that is one thing, strong leadership, and I'm talking management, directors, executive. If you have the right people in place and you have that support, there's never a question. If your team just did 75 patients and you let them know the day before and they're like, yep, get them lunch. Those are the types of things that help keep people. And
Yes, because you see that they notice, they see what we're doing. They see that we're struggling. And there are some really great bosses and managers who they see that struggle and they step in and they're working right alongside you. And, you know, what do you need? How can I help you? You know, I am right here with you, and they are in the trenches with you working through it. And then there are the others who just, they don't even know what's going on. They're completely clueless. They come and they say, how's your day going? What do you mean, how's my day going? I'm drowning right now.
Does this not tell you anything?
Like, nobody's been to lunch. We're all drowning. And they're clueless. They're like, oh.
but that
They're
all
C-suiters. They just hang out.
that
in their
all I
C-suite.
still say that
Yeah.
all starts with that support for those floor managers. Like, if those managers don't feel supportive, then it's going to trickle down and you're not going to have satisfaction on the teams. It's just a whole thing. And my big thing was I really have been doing a lot of work on nurse manager burnout because of how much it affects frontline. And the statistic that I found, and it's crazy, is that currently there are 380,000 active nurse manager job openings.
Wow.
And currently working nurse managers are 175,000. So,
Almost half.
and
of
they
what's-
found,
50% of the positions.
well,
are
and
full.
they said that a huge, obviously, it highlights just an amazing gap in leadership. But what they found is lack of support from administration. That the managers that are trying to help with
Support their
retention
staff.
and grow their teams aren't getting support from administration. So without that support, then you're constantly going to be having turnover in the departments and fatigue and burnout
Sick
without
calls.
without being able to have the support and give the team what they need. It's
I mean,
insane.
how many times have you guys gotten that call right before your shift, and then one or two nurses had just called out, and you knew, like, literally, you're just almost crying because you know exactly what the day's going to look like before it even started.
Yep.
you know exactly what you're like. How are we gonna do this?
Or like,
Well,
when
and
you
a
know
good
we-
leader
yeah.
wants to help. A good leader should know how to jump in and help and see the
Yep.
gaps, the deficits, and be able to help with that.
Step in and
That's-
say, today I'm a floor nurse.
And,
Yeah.
and say, what do you need?
Today
And
I'm not the manager.
be
I'm the floor
supportive.
nurse. I'm
Yeah.
working right alongside
Yep.
you. Let's do this.
Absolutely.
You know.
Well, I
That's
see a
what
bit of
makes a
irony
leader.
in this, in that you go to the doctor and they tell you, look, you've got to keep your stress levels low in order to keep yourself healthy. You've got to drink water, on a regular level, use the bathroom, and eat appropriately. Then you have nurses, and they're like, nurse, what are you doing? I've just worked 20 hours without food, water, or anything. Well, get your ass back to work. I mean, it seems like your profession just really preaches the rules, but nobody follows the rules at the hospital.
Because you can't. There's always patients to take care of, and that's the number one priority. Is you got to make sure that that patient who walks through that door is taken care of 100%, and that is the most important thing, and that's why you're there.
Yeah.
And if you can't do that, then why the hell are you there?
Certainly.
Yep.
So, I mean,
Somebody's
it goes
taking
back to
care
the
of
administrative failure, right? That
Yep.
they are not looking at the fact that nurses are under such high stress levels that it's going to cause them to call in. It's caused them higher levels of sickness, higher levels of, burnout and having to retrain everybody.
Well, and it's a calling for us.
It is.
Nursing is a calling and so a lot of us, our hearts are very much in it. And so we are willing to work those extra hours, to go without eating, to go without drinking, to go without peeing, to make sure that those patients are cared for. Because that's in our heart, that's what we're there to do. So, it's very much a calling. And so I think they're lucky in that, these administrators.
I feel like that's taken advantage of.
Yeah,
Well,
Absolutely. Because they know.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, nurses are there to nurse, to nurse others. Nobody is caring for the nurse, including often themselves.
Yep.
Speaking of caring for the nurse, I think as a sign of our appreciation, we actually put together a little video for you guys, all the nurses out there, and we'll go ahead and show that real quick. It'll just be a few minute break for us in studio, and then we'll be right back in the action.
What if you
Was that?
We just talked about this.
She walks the halls in silence, eyes tired but full of grace. Another night of healing, no time to slow the pace. The world keeps asking more, she gives and still it grows. But underneath that armor is a heart nobody knows. Hold on, you're stronger than you know. Even angels need a rest to glow. When the weight gets heavy, let it show. It's okay to say I'm not okay sometimes. Who is going to nurse the nurse?
He leads a team that's breaking, still he won't let them see that every staff request takes a piece of his peace.
Paperwork and pressure, a badge that hides the pain. He tells them we'll get through this while standing in the rain. Hold on, you're stronger than you know. Even heroes need time to grow. Take a breath, let the tears flow. It's okay to say I'm not okay sometimes. Who is gonna nurse the nurse?
You were born to heal, but you deserve to feel not just the wounds of others, but your own path to recover. You can't light the world if your flame runs low. You've earned the right to let someone else hold the load. So hold on, you're stronger than you know. You've carried more than you should alone. But the world needs your heart, not just your hands. So please take care while you still can. Who is gonna nurse the nurse if you fail?
Hello, guys. I want to thank all of the nurses who actually sent me photos to add into that one. There were a lot of personal ones in there. And I want to thank our lovely friends out there that did that. So hope you all enjoyed that lovely little video. So one of the things that I did a little ahead of time is I found some resources for Nurses Burnout. In Montana, there's a couple different things. So the Montana Nurses Association actually has a program focusing on mental health and awareness and self-care. There's also the Employee Assistance Program, EAP, for state employees. That doesn't really help a whole lot of people, but I know that there are some state places as well.
We
And
have
then-
an EAP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's Montana Warm Line. I've never heard of that one. So it's a free confidential phone line offering emotional support for individuals experiencing mental health challenges, including burnout. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I'd never even heard of it. So I was like, oh, better share that kind of stuff. Montana Health Centers, behavioral health centers, as well as there was a Senate Bill 497, which is the confidential mental health support, recently passed, which provides confidential space for healthcare workers to seek mental health support, removes the obligation to report personal struggles to licensing boards. So it actually, what that one does is actually so that nurses, when they call these numbers or they reach out for help, it doesn't go to the state board and
They don't feel like they're going to be punished
for their
for reaching out and saying, I'm
"Hey,
suffering, I'm struggling." Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know how many times you sit there and you cry with a patient, or you come home and you watch the patient go. I mean, or whatever. I mean, luckily for me, last few years of nursing was in a procedural area where we didn't lose patients very often, but it did still happen. Mm-hmm. And one of the worst ones I ever had was actually in a surgical unit. And what had happened is he had actually had a bronchoscope, and the doctor had clipped part of his lung, and it was the most terrifying thing in the world, because he started coughing and just started coughing, couldn't quit coughing, and literally started coughing up blood, and within 5 minutes we had the code, everything going, and we lost him within 10. It was
the other hard thing about that is you have other patients as well, and so you have to put your work face back on.
Yes.
And go into that next room just a minute later.
And act like it's just fine.
Act like everything is just fine, right? You don't want them to know what just happened. And so, you have to just completely put that aside. And that is so tough.
It's interesting from an outsider's perspective to hear you say that's the hard part, because that all sounded pretty hard to me. I'm just saying, like, give you guys some credit where it's due here.
Most
It
certainly.
is hard though, because you can go from one room that's a different temperature into a joyous room, and you can't bring the cancer diagnosis of the previous room into the joyous room, but it's still in you.
Right.
That's hard.
So, Shannon, you said you had some statistics as well.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Played on it.
These are pretty interesting. So, These are from the National Nursing Workforce Survey that was done in the Journal of Nursing Regulation in April of 2025. The total number of active RN licenses is 5,641,311, and 88% of those are working as nurses.
Wow.
Most of them practice in hospitals, 53%. The median age is 50 years old, and 40% of nurses plan to leave the nursing profession over the next 5 years. And the top reasons cited, aside from retirement, would be stress, burnout, workload, understaffing, inadequate pay, and violence.
That's a big
Workplace.
number of the workforce that's about
Yeah.
ready to exit within 5 years. I mean, and
You figure
so
50%, I mean, that's crazy, but that 50 years old is the mean age, first of all.
Yeah, that is
Hmm.
totally crazy.
But if
Yeah.
you think about it, how many new nurses have you guys seen that quit within 5?
Yeah, they don't
Yep.
stick around.
They don't
They
stay.
don't stay.
No.
They get
It's a tough
married, they do
job.
whatever, and then they have their kids and they're done.
And they're gone.
They don't ever
Or
come back.
they realize what
This
what
wasn't for
nursing
me.
is, yeah, which
Mhm.
can happen.
It's not this glamorous job that
Mhm.
Instagram makes it look like.
Yeah.
It's not.
Oh, God, I look good in scrubs and this little
Yeah,
stethoscope
looking so
around my
cute in your
neck.
scrubs. It's not really that.
So, I mean, we are a cannabis podcast, and we appreciate all of you guys coming out and speaking with us on your nursing experience. One of the things I've got to ask before I let somebody else come in and start with their segment, how much do you guys see cannabis, people wanting to use cannabis and saying, you know what, I don't want to even get into nursing because they don't allow me to utilize cannabis? Or do you see that as something that's being more and more relaxed these days?
I don't see that as an issue with like the nurses or nursing or the profession itself. What you do at home is different from what you do at work, and like you don't mix the two. But I think what we're seeing as nurses is a lot more patients utilizing it.
Sure.
For pain control, for anxiety, for issues, where when they have cancer and they're having a hard time eating, nausea issues. So we're seeing a lot more of it in our patient population. And it has helped a lot of them significantly. Like, it's a huge, a lot of them are no longer taking painkillers, Oxy,
Yeah.
Norco. They're no longer taking those. They're completely off of them, and they're just on marijuana, whether it be edibles or smoking it. Everybody has their own preference of what
Definitely.
they do, tinctures. But yeah, we have seen a lot more of it in the medical world, and I think it's a blessing getting them off of those narcotics is a huge thing. Those narcotics are addictive and just have a lot of side effects, and you just don't see that with the marijuana.
It seems smart, being as how we for years have had an opioid crisis. And now with the fentanyl crisis and everything that's going on out there, that, if cannabis could lead away from those things, that maybe we should support it a little better.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate all you guys' time. I'll be back with my news here in a bit, but I think somebody else has some segments, and I'll let you continue the discussion.
Well, I
In
have
that-
to say,
oh.
as going from the medical field and then doing the dispensary, we have a lot of people who come in now that say that their VA doctor sent them. And we even have a couple of customers, regulars, that they get the receipt because their insurance actually reimburses them
That's
for
pretty
their
awesome.
marijuana
That's great.
products. And I mean, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you never would
Never.
have seen it. Never. In fact, the pain clinics actually kicked people off of their pain plans and all of that because they were on marijuana, or if they even showed up hot for it at all, that you lost your meds. You don't get any of your pain meds as well.
Which is crazy because you'd be using actually less.
Exactly.
I think that they still do that. I don't know for sure, but I think that pain clinics, they have to test negative in order to continue going to the pain clinic.
That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few clients through the dispensary that recently have just said they're done with the pain clinic and have started using, and they're like, yeah, I'm gonna get terminated, but I'm done.
Which is sad that they have to choose.
Mm-hmm.
When, you use the marijuana actually helps bring in through the endocannabinoid system, brings in those pain meds and actually makes them more effective so that they do use less. And so instead of using a 10 milligram of morphine, they may only need a 5 milligram of morphine,
Right.
or 20 milligrams of oxycodone instead of 60 milligrams of oxycodone.
I mean, I don't know anything about studies or anything like that, but my husband used to have a dispensary and he had mainly medical patients. And he had one patient with terminal cancer, and it changed this patient's life. I mean, and we're not talking like she was elderly. And another patient who had seizures, and the medication that patient was on was outrageous. And I don't know why or how or any of the science behind it, but if he knew he was going to have a seizure and he had what I guess he was calling it his halo, if he used his marijuana, then it could prevent the seizure from happening. And he could not afford his seizure medication. So it really helped him. So I don't, there's so many aspects that it can help patients with, and I'm sure
Parkinson's.
Yeah. It
MS,
will.
Huntington's.
Yep.
Yep. And not only the THC component, but the CBD component.
Yeah.
They can work
And the
together through the
Well,
endocannabinoid
speaking of
system.
terpenes and science, we should get into the stoner trivia.
that is kind of why I scooted over here. I know I was trying. Thank you, Daniel. I was
No
trying
worries.
to
I was doing my
find a
best.
good spot to segue in.
It's such good conversation. We don't want to sneak in such a bad spot anytime.
the next subject. So
It is. Do you want to play the video or do you just want to go straight into trivia tonight?
The video.
Smoking like a rasta, feeling so high. We talk about cannabis and getting fly. Are you smarter than a stoner? Let's find out. Listen up,
B, the
my
plant's
friends.
flavor
I
and
got
aroma
something to
compounds.
shout. Cannabis
the plant's
knowledge,
fibers.
let it flow through your mind. Getting blazed, smoking loud. We all unwind. Trivia questions, can you keep up the pace? Let's see if you're sharper in this smoky haze.
Sorry.
You know,
We're back. Ha ha ha.
yeah. Okay. All right. So, yes.
A little bit.
Welcome back, folks. We are going to do another little bit of Are You Smarter Than a Stoner?
She's got some fun little questions for us.
Oh man, yeah. I tried to do. I've tried to start off with another easy one this week. So number one, what is keef? A type of strong edible. B, a collection of loose trichomes from the plant. C, a cannabis concentrate made with solvents. Or D, a hash oil brand made solventless.
B.
B.
You guys have whiteboards.
I have no
Oh,
idea.
we both
I didn't.
said B.
Yes.
Sorry about that. I could have explained for in-house. Dang.
Here, we'll do it.
We need buttons.
It was sticky notes, so.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
We used to do sticky notes and stick them on our forehead, so
It's facts. It's B.
here's mine.
We're slowly evolving.
We can do it like Jeopardy style. Maybe do trivia and no chat.
I should just copy what she puts. Because you probably know.
I mean, she should know.
PhD in trying to stump us, dude.
Alrighty. Next slide. So number one, what is keef? That is B, a collection of loose trichomes from the plant.
It's the good stuff.
It is.
It's the caviar of your weed.
Well, like Nate just said, because he's not near a mic at all, it is the good stuff. It is the caviar of your weed.
So it usually looks brown.
Or golden.
I just know, like, the devil's lettuce. I know that.
Yes.
I
This
just know
is
a
the
few
be- this
things.
is the things that comes off the devil's lettuce.
I think D.
Number two, how can high levels of potassium during late flowering affect other nutrients?
I don't know, I'm just
I'm
guessing.
gonna
This
guess the
also
same.
applies to tomatoes.
I
I was
think
just
based on
gonna
the
say.
Cannabis is like
Kind of.
Well, because of potassium and calcium.
A.
Yeah.
A, it increases magnesium and calcium uptake. B, it reduces iron uptake in the root zone. C, it improves nitrogen mobility. Or D, it competes with calcium and magnesium, potentially causing deficiencies.
I'm gonna say
This is a
D.
guess.
I'm saying A.
I mean, we know Michelle's gonna be right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michelle's probably right. She's the one who grows it.
I said D.
I
think
also
it's
went
C.
with
This
D.
is
Yeah.
just based on what I know about medicine.
That's what I did,
That's
yes.
what we were doing.
Yes, that's why we all chose D.
I tried to pick some sciencey questions, maybe.
You know, plant science is shockingly similar to.
Oh.
Human.
Yes, very
Mhm.
similar.
So we are
Are you
learning.
cheating,
Connected.
Michelle?
So number 2, how can high levels of potassium during
that's
late
D.
You were
flowering
right.
affect other
Awesome.
nutrients? D, it competes with calcium and magnesium, potentially causing deficiencies.
In your tomato plants.
I think I only did 3 questions this week.
That's okay. We're cooking, so we're good.
Yeah.
So number 3, which of the following best defines a polyhybrid cannabis strain? A, a strain created from multiple F1 phenotypes. B, a cross between 2 pure landrace strains. C, a cultivar containing a complex mix of multiple hybrid parents. Or D, an elite clone derived from stabilized IBLs or inbred lines.
Damn, Tanaki, I didn't know you were just gonna
Yeah,
raise it up
sorry,
to the top
I-
floor there.
I'm gonna say.
So do the inbred
That's a
lines
toughie.
Me
start
too.
in-
I'm
But
gonna
I'm
say
gonna
C.
guess
I'm
A.
guessing.
Because C is the only one that has poly.
They're like the cells.
Makes
Are they
poly.
like
Bucktooth
Makes sense.
inbred.
The inbred is the back crossing.
What do you
So
think?
like double gum maybe. It's probably a back
What do you
cross of
think?
bubble gum.
Todd says he has no clue.
I'm gonna guess C.
I'm guessing C. I can't, but that's a guess.
I'm with
We're
you.
both with A.
Yep.
Daniel, what do you got?
I went with C.
I did too.
I love, no one can see it, but Daniel was peeking around at everybody else's boards before he said his answer.
I did. That is true, but mine was already written.
Okay.
Got C from Montana Horseman in the chat. Thanks for participating. Everybody, if you participate, it's more fun. We love seeing what you guys say. None of us know full answers except for Tanaki. Ha ha ha.
Facts. Number 3, which of the following best defines a polyhybrid
Got it.
cannabis strain?
Aren't you a
That is
smart-
C.
You're smarter
A
than
cultivar
a
containing a
stoner.
complex mix of multiple hybrid parents.
Well, it's because it's had, it's poly, so I knew it had to be many.
It had to be mini. Yeah.
Just like
Like polyamory.
This lady
Right?
knows how to test.
Well, maybe.
That or politics, meaning many bloodsuckers.
Thank y'all for playing, folks.
Cool. Well, I suppose with that, we are cooking right along in our episode, so we'll jump straight into the Strain of the Week video here. And Daniel will be back to talk to you guys about that. And we'll get into terpenes. That'll be fun.
Weird third person. Okay.
Lemon on my lips, sugar on my skin. She walks in slow, let the night begin. Glass jaw crack, got a citrus bite. Dirty girl's here and she's feeling right. Golden haze got me flowing free, twisting up dreams in the galaxy. One hit spark, now I'm burning bright. Dirty girl dance through the neon light. Dirty girl, twist it, roll it, hit that fire. Lift me up, take me high. Dirty girl, lemon light and midnight sin. Let the bass drop, pull me in.
Okay, hey, there you go. Now I can hear myself talking. All right, everybody, welcome back. Once again, hey, it's been a while. Like 50 minutes since I've been on camera or whatever. Dirty Girl, it's one of our favorite strains. Thank you guys for voting 3 weeks ago. Dirty Girl is a sativa-dominant cross of a train wreck hybrid known as Arcata Lemon Wreck and Cinderella 99. Cinderella 99 being a strain that I've had myself before. This combination produces a tropical aroma of pineapples and citrus fruit coming from that terpene limonene. Now, you guys might know limonene. You'll find that in a lot of products these days, hair products, otherwise. Terpenes are used all over the place, but think anything lemon, lime, orangey, just delicious. What else we got here? Flavor, it's like sweet lemon candy, which is a common flavor profile in these days. They love to add that sugar flavor, that sugar aftertaste. I think, I don't know why everyone loves it so much.
More and more strains.
Yep.
Like more fruity flavors or sweet flavors.
Yeah, definitely. Dirty Girl will elevate your mood and may help avoid the complications of depression, anxiety, and migraine headaches. Migraine headaches. So that's probably the caryophyllene helping out with that, reducing inflammation amongst other things. To kind of explain to you guys a little bit about terpenes, what kind of tea would you tell someone to drink in the evening?
Chamomile.
Exactly. That's
or
basically
valerian if they don't sleep.
Right.
Have anxiety.
It's the same idea. All the plants have terpenes, marijuana being one of them, and the terpenes that are in the specific strain of marijuana that we grow affects how it feels completely. You could have a strain that is like drinking a cup of coffee. You can have a strain that literally knocks you out, and you cannot stop yourself from falling asleep. Absolutely.
Interesting.
So
Wow.
each strains have their own, and that's why we do the strain of the week, is because every strain has its own genetics and its own different
Affects everything.
effects, terpenes,
Smells.
everything, the way it
Once
affects.
you get past the skunk smell, everything smells way different too. Every strain.
That's
You get to the
crazy.
point where you have different effects of it, and so you'll have somebody who'll come in and be like, "Man, I need something that's going to keep me awake, but also help me with my pain. I need something that's going to make me sleep. I need something that's going to give me
Pain relief.
pain relief or help with
yeah.
anxiety or depression."
And it depends on what kind of pain relief, right? Like if you're
Yes.
talking neuropathic pain, like a migraine or something like that, that might be a different strain than my arm is broken. You know, it would be. I would recommend different strains for that. For sure.
Same with like your RSO and your tinctures. You'd want, if you're looking for more something that's going to give you more relaxing effects, help you with that pain. Your more CBD indica strains, CBD additives, CBD, CBN, CBG, all those goodies.
Another way I describe it to people is sort of like if you're a drinker, you know, tequila might make you feel one way, whiskey might make you feel another way. They're both even at the same alcohol percent. You know, it should in theory affect you the same, but it doesn't, or at least not for me.
Yes.
Wow, weed has come a long way
Yeah,
from the couple of strains there. I mean, it was like
ditch
street weed.
red or gold.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
Yeah.
that was the
You had
thing
good
here,
weed or
is
ditch
every-
weed?
Yeah.
You had skunk weed or good weed?
Yeah.
That
It was
it.
called Kind Bud, from what I understand.
And now they're actually making them even more. Like they'll take and break down even these strains to the point where they get them into the concentrates,
Mhm.
the distillate. They can take out certain things, add certain terpenes. So there are a lot of like your vape pens.
It's like designer.
Yeah,
actually
totally.
has like a terpenes put into them. A lot of them.
Good
And so
breeders
if you
have
know-
are well known at this point. You can expect consistent good results from certain people that are breeding certain plants. So it's really interesting. Sort of another good example or cross example would be apples, right? There's so many different kinds of apples out there. I think cannabis is really the same. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Anyway, end stream.
Man,
No, I'm just kidding.
you try to, you remind Daniel to say something and he doesn't say it. Make sure you go check out those videos.
Oh, yeah.
Both the nurse video that Michelle had made and the strain of the week video is always going to be posted to YouTube. We've got those posting at 10 o'clock tonight, so make sure you go check out the full strain of the week video.
And I'm also supposed to reach out to Justin out there. Thank you, Justin. And apparently the CBD dog treats work well, so we're glad to hear that. Thank you for the feedback.
Glad to hear it.
Awesome.
Things. We actually, like they say that THC is actually bad for dogs. Okay, every single dog that we have ever brought to our grow eats the plants.
Yeah.
They will literally eat the leaves right off the plant. and it's not always in flour. They'll do it in veg as well. Two Socks, Charlie, Diesel,
Yep.
any of them, they'll come in and they'll just take a little nibbles. We can always tell which plant that they've thing. It's
They're-
funny because they'll go for the sativas more in the morning and the indicas more in the afternoon.
Right
So
now
you-
they're on the ice cream cake.
Ice cream
Solidly,
cake,
the
they're like
last
that.
harvest was the golden goat off in the corner. Yeah, they know their goodies.
You guys need a dog's
Funny.
recommendation.
That's why he's laid here the whole time.
Yes.
It's clear
Yes.
now.
That was from the CBD,
That
for
was
sure.
from the CBD. So I gave him a little CBD. And so, and he, I mean, you saw him, he jumps around, he acts like a complete maniac when he gets to have his CBDs. I mean, he's like, I'm getting my drugs and I'm going to sleep tonight.
And if you look up a lot of veterinarian papers these days, CBD comes highly recommended for just about everything. Again, all the same things that it would help with in humans. So like CBD outside of THC, very good for your anti-inflammatory, some
Pain.
autoimmune benefits. Exactly.
Anxiety.
Your muscles.
Well,
Sleep.
Gavi with her eye, they
Yes.
actually recommended THC for my dog.
Yeah.
Oh,
She
okay.
had, like, she was going blind and she had like severe pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, my doggy had doggy glaucoma and they gave her,
That's what our dog. She lost her eye from a tumor,
yeah.
and I had her on a CBD tincture, which was for pain and also for anxiety. She would get anxious.
Yeah, when we had Osiris, he actually had seizures starting as a pup, and they recommended CBD. We had him on CBD for many years before we actually had to put him on the
Seizure med.
seizure meds. And when you talk about money, I'm not kidding you. Like, we spent over $300 a month on seizure meds for this dog. He was, and we had there was at one point we had him like 3 times a day, basically.
Oh my gosh.
And so you had one at 8 in the morning, one at 3:20, and then one at 8 at night. And literally we had different meds, and so you're trying to give your dog these pills. Well, you try the little doggy treats, and you stick the pill in there, and then he eats the treat and spits the pill back out at you. And so we actually ended up started giving it to him in cheese. Well, then he got constipated, so that had to go. You can't give the dog cheese 3 times a day. Guess what's going to happen?
Yep.
And so then we end up getting,
Sorry,
we end up doing ham and doing slices of ham. Well, okay, thing of ham is like what, $6, $8 for the pre-sliced ham. We actually bought a slicer because we were giving this dog so much ham.
He
It
got
was
big.
cheaper.
He was a big boy. He
was a
loved
big
it. He
boy.
loved the ham diet. He was so mad when you stopped doing that as
He
much.
was probably getting sodium
Overload.
overload.
It was so
Probably
bad.
nitrates.
It's just ridiculous.
He was a happy boy though.
He was.
He loved it. Yeah, I mean, we're good. I sincerely
Before we
appreciate
go,
everyone's
I do have
time.
A couple of things to prevent nurse burnout.
Let's do it.
Prioritizing your mental health is probably our biggest thing for nurses. We forget to take care of ourselves. We forget that we are important too. We go and we take care of everybody else. Making sure we're talking to people, whether it's a therapist, a peer counselor, meditation. And it's okay to just say no. I don't want to. No, I'm not doing that.
Do you guys remember the first time
Limit
you said
your extra shifts or call shifts when possible, and clear boundaries between work and home. So when you come home, leave work there, and don't take home to work either, because that also brings in more stresses to your environment. Making sure, like you said, exercise, moving your body, sleep and nutrition, making sure you're getting your good sleep, which, I mean, when you're working a 12-hour shift, I mean, I don't know how many times you come home at 2 to 3 hours maybe, and then you're to bed and then back at it, and you're doing that for 3-4 days in a week, I mean, the one thing about nursing is there is one of the benefits about being a nurse is the 12-hour shifts. Let's all admit it.
I agree.
I hate them.
I don't
I
have.
thought they
love
were
them.
great.
I don't work
because
12-hour
it was
shifts.
3 days
No.
a week.
I miss 12-hour shifts because I work 5/8.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it doesn't leave much time for yourself.
Nope.
For
Yeah.
for it's just not. Yes, I would agree. That is a benefit.
It is a benefit.
Having 4 days
honestly.
off a week is a benefit.
Yep.
Yes. Lean into your community, talking to your colleagues, peer support groups, fostering connections, and focusing on purpose and not perfection. So why am I doing this? It doesn't have to be perfect, but I do have to be aware,
Purposeful.
purposeful what I'm
Yeah.
doing. Exactly. And last but not least, making sure to take time to make joy. So whether that's doing something on your days off or spending time, whatever your joy time is. I mean, each one of us has our own little, Amber has her horses,
Mm-hmm.
you know. I mean, mine is my family and my dogs. I mean, my kids and grandkids now. I mean, it just makes a huge difference.
I think you should also make time for pub crawl.
Pub crawl. Very important. Pub crawl.
That's a community event?
That
It is a
community.
community event,
Yes, indeed.
a nursing community event.
Okay, well.
Speaking of community and speaking of events, let's go ahead and get into the news.
All right, I will roll that clip and we will be right back.
Turn up the lights, let's start the show. Nate's got the scoop you need to know. Cannabis updates fresh and real. Tune in with Nate, it's the big deal. Cannabis news with Nate, let's go. Every story makes you glow. Stay informed, don't be late. Cannabis news with Nate.
All right, we'll be back right now.
All right, we're back with the news. Yeah, that kind of stuff that everybody really loves these days, especially if you're watching TikTok. So, real quickly, we've got some fiasco going on with the Montana testing laboratory still. We have only one single testing laboratory that is operational in the state of Montana for the cannabis control program. We used to have two. Well, we had three, and now we were down to one single cannabis lab that's able to do the entirety of the state and do all the testings. The first lab, they have had problems getting the state certify their pesticide testing machine, and so that was a new requirement that was brought in. They wanted pesticides tested for all the cannabis products that are being produced out there, all the edible products. They have to go through rigorous testing regiment, and unfortunately, the CCD has to go out and inspect these machines, make sure they're working properly, and for some reason or another, for over, I think, 8 weeks now, they have not been able to, get out there and get any of this testing done. So
I
that's
think that
caused a
they
huge bottleneck in
Came
the
and
situation.
got some testing, but they wanted something else to be done, is from what I understand.
Sure.
And that will take another week to 2 weeks, is what the lab told me when I contacted them.
So we're looking possibly, 3 months with only one testing laboratory able to do it. Fidelity Labs is the one that is still working right now, but they said, they're starting to see a pretty huge influx of people trying to get their products over to them. This is causing a pretty huge bottleneck. And so for all the patients out there looking for products, all of the consumers out there looking for products, know that it typically is not your dispensary that is causing the issue right now. It is because the state really hasn't got a viable, program, in my opinion. If Nordic Lab just decided to say, to hell with it, we're out of here, that leaves one single testing laboratory in the entire state. I mean, could you guys imagine having only one testing laboratory for any of the stuff that you had to do? I mean, it would make your jobs impossible, but somehow we in the cannabis world are expected to deal with all these hoops that the state put in place, but they can't make a functional program. So
Can I ask, what are they testing for besides just pesticides? What are the other things? Is it purity, like THC levels? What exactly are they testing for besides just pesticides?
yeah, that's a great
Not that it
question.
matters,
So
as far as having one
they test for a large number of different products that could be harmful to human beings. There's a pretty good panel there, but they're also testing the THC potency. And then if you pay a little bit extra, you can actually get the terpene profile which will give you a breakdown of all the cannabinoids that are in that plant, the specific terpenes that may be effective. Like we were talking about earlier, a lot of them.
Anxiety or other things.
Yeah, myrcene, caryophyllene, ocimene, some of those play out. And so people can really look and see what they're doing. If somebody has anxiety, there's certain terpenes that actually work counter to that.
Right.
And so if they're going out and they're getting cannabis that have that terpene in there, and it makes them extremely anxious.
Right.
Blue Dream is that way for me. I love Blue Dream, great plant, wonderful to grow, everything else like that. Makes me paranoid as all hell. And I don't know why, but it's just something within its terpene profile that
So
doesn't
if you're
work for me.
using it medically, you want to know what's in there because you know what works for you and what doesn't. And so it's really important that it is tested.
That's exactly right. Now, the pesticides, you know, they brought that panel in just because a lot of people were feeding pesticides systemically to their plants.
Okay.
So they were bringing it in through the soil root system and then bringing it in. And that was leaving a lot of residuals. A lot of people were saying that, you know, that was making them sick. There was complaints, everything else like that. Pretty interesting to me that none of this happened during the medical program when we had no testing. It seems like more and more people are starting to get sick and picky now that we have more and more testing.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean.
Is I just want to ask, is mold another thing that they look for? 'Cause
Absolutely, yes.
Of course, it is a product that is dried, not completely dried, so it is moist.
Yes.
And people do look for the moisture in it. So they don't want something that's completely dried out, but you also don't want something that has mold growing. That could definitely cause some issues health-wise.
Well, you hit it right on the head right there. Because of the mold testing and everything else like that, most of the time you have to dry it to less than 10% or 12% moisture content. So by the time we even put it in the package, there's less than 12%. Okay. And so it's really, really hard to keep it to that moisture level. We've used Brevita packs, all kinds of other things. And in fact, one of the things that we've seen is that actually that created mold because it was touching the cannabis and it kept moisture there, but
Sure.
then that started mold at that point.
Right, and
So-
it's a trial and error process, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to, you know, your growing style and stuff like that. I mean, if you're not in a very clean environment, you're not cleaning it up very well, you have mold in your building already, you're obviously going to be more susceptible to mold spores.
Yeah.
So the more you can clean your intake air, the more that you can clean your environment, I think that leads to a wonderful thing. That's one of the things I got to give a shout out to our crew for doing such a great job on doing. So, but yeah, that's it. I mean, as far as our testing goes, you know, mold I think is one of the bigger ones in the bigger
I'd say
panels.
it's really important that these things are being tested, you know. And it is legal here. It should be tested like any other product, and for its purity and for any kind of additives that might be harmful to people. Yeah, they need more testing, and that's unfortunate that they only have maybe one lab.
Well, and it's not like the normal consumer, because we also have home grow situations and stuff where people can grow their own plants at home. I mean, but the normal consumer can't just go right to the testing laboratories and ask them, hey, by the way, can you go ahead and test this for me? There's a process the state has. You know, you have to go through the metric system. You have to have a chain of custody report. I mean, it's when we explain what we have to go through just to get a test sample to the lab, we have police officers that say they don't have to go through that to check evidence out of the evidence locker.
Sure.
You know, the ATF doesn't have to go through that in order to give you a firearm.
Yeah,
So we're under much more stringent, you know, regimens for that for sure.
sure.
So, new health study. This is coming out of the Open Respiratory Research shows that both smoking marijuana and eating edibles may increase your risk of heart attack, stroke, or arrhythmia. Now, I'm going to throw a quick warning out on this one right here. This is coming out quite a bit. You're going to see a lot of these stories coming out, but as we covered a couple of weeks ago, the DEA is working very closely with a lobbying group, an anti-cannabis lobbying group, to put out a lot of this information. So I would strongly caution everybody to go out and look at actually what's going on, look at these studies, and make sure that, you know, you educate yourself on it. We're bringing you this as a matter of proper education and proper news reporting, but I'm skeptical of this research. It's from the University of Ottawa, analyzed over 430,000 adult patients and flagged THC cardiovascular effects, especially concerning those with pre-existing conditions. So, I mean,
Was this post-COVID?
That's a great question.
There's a lot more cardiac issues related to COVID.
Yeah.
So,
But they blame on a lot of other things.
Yeah.
so I'm wondering, what are they testing? When did these results? Were they from people?
What's the methodology look like?
Right.
What's the data look like? I've seen a lot of stuff like this come out too, where you read the article headline and then you actually read the data and it's like 0.02% variance, and you're like, I don't really know if that's
Yes.
significant enough to really matter, but
There should
just
be,
read
yeah.
the research for
Our
sure.
own history and our own personal studies. I mean, with Nate and his heart issues, if he smokes a dab before he goes and gets his cholesterol done,
Your LDLs are going to be off the chart, bro.
he is like to the point where the nurses are like, he's critical, he's gonna die. They're calling and freaking out. And then if he doesn't smoke the night before or the morning of his actual blood test, his cholesterol levels are actually almost low. And so it's actually quite interesting that if that is a huge deal, if people need to know that kind of thing, if they're smoking concentrates, it is oils, it's fats, it's lipids.
Lipids, fats,
that's
and
what
waxes.
I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
Why
Gonna
would
go
that
in-
affect cholesterol? Now
Yep, it
I
goes
didn't
into
realize
your
it's an oil.
bloodstream. Yep.
So a dab means oil. Or
So it's
something?
just the
Oh.
essential oil
Okay.
off the plant. So your lipids, your fats, your waxes, and stuff like that. That's what's really. I mean, obviously your THC and the other things that are combined in there, but a lot of people will go through the process of color remediation, do all kinds of other things to try to get rid of most of the lipids, the fats, the waxes, and stuff like that. My personal experience is oftentimes that leads to a light beer or a non-alcoholic beer. You basically stripped everything out of it. It's nice, beautiful, and white, but it tastes like shit, and it really doesn't do much for you.
So if you smoked just bud or weed versus the dab, you wouldn't have any issue on it. Wouldn't impact your LDL.
No, if you smoked if I smoked a blunt versus maybe a bowl, a little bit different, but you figure dab is a much more concentrated version, and so to put it into like a sort of a medical term, you have a flower that is sort of like the aspirin, and then the dab would sort of be like, the Loratab. The more that you add something, the more potent it's going to get. So I maybe a Tylenol and Loratab, even though Loratab has Tylenol or acetaminophen in it.
How is the dab made?
So
I'm just curious.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
don't know.
No, and these are great questions for sure. We appreciate it definitely during the news segment. So typically dabs are made a couple of different ways, but the most common way is they use either butane, pentane, or propane. And what they do is it's just like any other astringent, any other essential oil. They strip it off of the plant, and then it goes through a process of removing whatever astringent that they used to extract that oil. So usually they'll go through a vacuum purge oven to where that pulls off all of the butane, recaptures the butane, puts it back into the tank. Most of this happens in a closed loop system. There are some big centrifuges that they're also starting to use a lot more, using centrifugal technology, less solvent.
To spin it off the plant?
That's exactly right. And what we were able to see with one of the episodes that we did in Murphy Murray, she came and did a big demonstration. She's one of the bigger national extractors and puts on courses around the country. Is they were able to take some of these dabs. They showed that they were extracted with certain, hydrocarbon or solvents, and then they ran them through the centrifuge and then put them under a microscope. And the more they did this, the cleaner and cleaner. I mean, they were able to see, well, here's a hair, here's like dirt, here's something that shouldn't be in there. And the more they did it, the more clean that this product came out. And so it was basically a pretty pure product at the end of it. There's another way of doing, similar to dabs, is the rosin press. People will take a heat press and some pressure, push all of the essential oils out using that way. So they consider that a solventless way of doing it. And then, of course, you have the old school bubble bag hash that people do. That's ice and water. That knocks the trichomes off that we were talking about earlier. The keef knocks that off and turns it into a hash product. And so you come out with the nice Afghani hash that everybody talked about back in the day, stuff like that. So those are different extraction methods. We could go into a lot more detail.
That's probably good.
But yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Probably too much information.
But going back to your study, I do want to say, a lot of people are using it medically. Any medication will have people will experience different side effects based on their own body chemistry.
Yeah.
So some people, maybe they do experience a little bit of tachycardia. Or like one thing that we do actually see at the hospital with people who ingest large amounts of marijuana, and like the number is probably very small. Like we see one in probably however many people who are out here smoking or ingesting it. We see the occasional patient with hyperemesis.
Mm-hmm.
So they are having. They're just vomiting and vomiting. They can't stop vomiting.
Yeah.
And it's related to which is really crazy because it helps a lot of cancer patients with nausea. So it just depends on your body chemistry, and everybody's different, and they're different strains maybe that
Yes.
you're ingesting, and just like any other medication or anything else that we put in our body.
Well, and I would challenge some of those people that are coming in with the hyperemesis and stuff like that to look at their CBD levels. We've ingested quite a bit of cannabis and even large amounts just through the social gatherings. People send us stuff to test on air and stuff like that. And one of the things that we found is that CBD actually is the perfect counter. If you're starting to feel like you're getting sick, you're starting to get a little bit woozy and overdosed, if you actually take CBD, that counters the THC.
Sure.
Yep,
And so
I
I think
read
some of
about
those one-to-one strengths.
Right. So it's just looking at what you're ingesting and knowing that your body chemistry might be a little bit different, and maybe finding the strains that work best for you, or and steering clear of those ones that might cause this hyperemesis. Or so anyways, just anything that you put in your body is going to cause a side effect. And so for them to put out this study and say, oh, it's causing the cardiac issue. Well, so many things can cause that.
Well,
and
Tylenol, liver damage.
Every
Right.
single little thing that you put in your body can cause that. And like everybody's different, and it just depends on their body chemistry.
Oh, I agree 100%.
For those studies, are they also seeing what else is in their system?
No. Smoking and,
And McDonald's? No,
Yeah,
I'm
what
just
else?
saying.
right?
Or what other medications are they taking? Are they dehydrated?
I didn't just eat, Five Guys burgers and fries, right before I walked in. They did
That
the
has
study
nothing
on
to
me.
do with
Nothing
it.
to do at all.
But I really appreciate you guys being here for this conversation, though, because this is exactly the kind of conversations we need to be having
Definitely.
to further these studies. Because, we're stoners. Michelle has a cross education in medical, but most of us don't. We don't know the right questions to ask.
Sure.
So it's very helpful. Thank you, guys.
Well, and I'm anxious to see medicine sort of starting to accept cannabis more.
I think they
Because I think that if a lot more doctors understood, if somebody walks into the emergency room and they ingested way too many edibles, they had 5 too many gummies, that maybe just a quick CBD would calm them down and turn that, and if they would sit down and sort of listen to some of us dumb stoners on how we fixed a lot of these things, then maybe we could get a lot more advanced, because cannabis was around in the medical field a lot longer than most of the medicines that we have today, for sure.
Absolutely.
It's not like all of us like to feel like we're greening out,
Right.
says the green out queen over here. I eat too many edibles a lot, and CBD is my savior.
Well, but up until recently, marijuana and THC and use of that was very frowned upon.
Yeah.
So it's only been recently, I would say, that I've noticed in the last even 5 years, that
Agree.
there's been a more embrace of that in the medical community for
I
patients,
Well, there's
and
a-
more physicians wanting to encourage patients towards seeking more natural routes.
Yeah. And I think, Daniel, you've talked about this quite a bit as well. You've had to do some of it. Montana's been part of the cannabis world for 20 years now. And I think, like you're talking about, for the first 15 years, it seemed like we were really educating doctors. They were like, my God, you're smoking cannabis? Like, no, sit down. Let me explain this to you a little. And those that were accepting, they really sort of went through it, and then you saw them later turn around and they were recommending it to patients and stuff like that. So it has taken quite a long time, and I think the last 5 years since COVID, people are really like, all right, let's look at the full spectrum of everything here.
Well, I think during the baby boomers era, there was a video that was put out by the government to specifically steer people away from marijuana. Wasn't it that reefer
Madness, yeah.
And, so it really got them into thinking that, oh my gosh, it's so scary. Look at these people. They're doing this marijuana, and look at what's happening to them. It's almost like they're having an acid trip or something, And not realistic at all, but it scared them into not doing it, not wanting to do it. And then also they're teaching their children, and then when their children start doing it, they're like, oh my gosh, you're doing that, like so scared of it. And so it was actually a government campaign that was put forth years ago that has been very successful.
Yes, and it's still going on today. We dealt with it at the legislative session. We had this guy from Colorado, Ben Court. He shows up. He, obviously couldn't handle his weed. It led to much darker things, according to him. And so he wants the rest of the world to not have fun because he's not responsible. And we see a lot of that. The other thing that we see is the drug treatment complex. They're necessary on a lot of levels, but also, they saw a lot of people no longer being able to be charged with crimes and stuff like that, and no longer being able to send to prison. So the prison complex and the drug treatment complex, they are both heavily invested in trying to keep marijuana legal. So much so that right now, it seems like most states are going to get psilocybin mushrooms passed as a medical treatment before we actually have cannabis passed throughout the entire United States.
It's crazy.
Well, and I just had a thought about what you said about the baby boomer generations. I wonder if that's why there's now been more embracing, because the doctors were of that age, and now we have younger doctors who are coming up that weren't baby boomers. So maybe that's where the shift has come in the healthcare profession towards marijuana.
When was the first time that medical marijuana was legal in Montana?
2004.
Okay, so that's when my husband first.
No, sorry, 2006 is when
Okay.
we first legalized.
So being in healthcare, I was like, there's got to be medical information on this, because it was only medical then. And I found so much information from Europe.
Yeah.
So you can find a lot of really, journal studies in Europe about the uses of marijuana for different medical things. And we actually did a lot of research on it, and I created these cards for each patient that had headaches or pain, and it was really easy to find. So hopefully we can start heading in that direction, because I know that they are working on studies and hopefully moving forward, because you're right, a lot of the younger doctors are starting to really get on board with less narcotics, more natural. So
Yeah. And that's one of the things that we deal with, which is very difficult. We're not allowed, as a cannabis dispensary or anything else like that, to make any what they call anecdotal statements. So we can't tell you, this may help with a headache, this may help with that, this may help with that. It's specifically prohibited in the law for us to really make any mention of that in our advertising or anything else like that. So the type of freedom of speech restrictions they have surrounding the cannabis industry alone, prevents a lot of these kind of conversations from happening. We greatly appreciate you guys. I better get knocking this out real quickly before we're here all night. So, real quickly, another study, University of California. Now, how University of California is. But, the researchers published Addictive Behaviors Report and just shut down an old stoner stereotype. So it turns out that smoking pot doesn't make you play any more video games. Basically, they did a quick study, and they found out that non-tokers actually probably played a little bit more video games than people who smoke cannabis.
That's because the tokers fell asleep.
Or they went for a snack.
No,
Too much indica.
I can personally account to this. I used to, honestly, I would call myself a video game addict in the past, but I don't know. Now I'd rather do literally anything else. I'll go do chores before playing video games after I smoke a bowl now. Like
Getting rid of that old stoner.
Yeah, I don't. It's true.
Lazy
though.
stoner
it is
man.
true. I've never believed that. Lazy people love to use weed as an excuse to be lazy.
Well, that's a fact. And, if you look at the amount of revenue that's been generated by the lazy stoners of not just Montana, but the entire United States, I think we're coming up to like $35 billion in taxes generated across the country.
What was New York last year? Was it like 6.5 million or something
Billion.
crazy? Billion.
Yeah,
they were a B.
They-
I
they-
forget.
they
They
had
were
the
the big
Bs.
Bs.
And here in Montana, I think we just hit $1 billion in tax generation. So,
Wow.
What are they using that for?
Yeah, that's
they keep arguing over it every 2 years. One of the things that our forefathers here in Montana really had the foresight to do is give us a 90-day legislative session every 2 years. Somehow they managed to even screw that up. And what happens is every 2 years the cannabis program changes some way or another. It used to be dedicated that the taxes went to drug treatment, went to beautification of the parks, went to
to the
walking
trail
trails,
trails.
all kinds of other stuff.
And it went to,
Things that were healthy.
Yeah,
Now,
Now it goes to the
elderly.
general fund, because I actually just read an article on that, and
Yes.
nobody can really tell you what the general fund is.
well, and they shot that down, but now it's going to like drug treatment facilities. It's going, to the prison
small
system. It's
portion
going
is.
to.
But it's still just a small piece of the pie
Yeah.
that is going to those areas. There's still a huge chunk that is going to this general fund.
Which all of our taxes generally go to the general fund, but like you said, there isn't a whole lot of accounting as to where it goes after it hit the general fund.
Yeah.
And I think there needs to be a
Should
little
be
more
going to the
accounting of that.
schools.
I think Doge is required in Montana. It should be
I
anyway.
think it should be.
But my position on all of this is that there is not one single product out there in Montana that you have to pay 20 to 23% as a consumer to purchase.
Yeah.
Medically, you don't have to go into a pharmacy and pay an extra 7% or 3% or 4% on top of your prescription drugs just because they want to sell it to you in a particular county or area.
Sure.
And so, I'm all for generating taxes, but we're starting to see multiple businesses fail. All of the small businesses where Montana, we used to pride ourselves on mom and pop businesses. We used to be very, very sort of anti-corporation, for the longest time and support the local shops. Now it's totally like, screw that. We want a big monopoly. And I'm also seeing this play out with this testing laboratory thing. I do not think, and I'm going to say this on camera, I do not think it's a coincidence that they are taking this damn long to certify one machine.
Sure.
And they don't have any other kind of protocol in place that would help during time of emergency or anything else like that. You got this much money coming in and you can't provide a functioning program.
Yeah.
So yeah. With that, we've got one more thing. Cannabis speed rolling becomes a sport. Think about that shit.
What's
Yeah,
that?
yep.
What's
Speed
rolling?
rolling?
Joints.
So the first ever national
speed
cannabis
rolling.
speed rolling competition launched,
get
turning
it.
joint rolling
get
into a legitimate spectator sport. Just like that NAL golf, just like the internet golf and everything else like that. People are actually spending a lot of time at tournaments and watching this online. How fast you can roll a joint, how fast you can roll a joint to look like an airplane, how fast you can roll a joint and run away from your sister from trying to steal it from you. There is just all kinds of things.
I knew
going on
a
with these
guy.
competitions.
I knew a guy in high school that would have won in these competitions easily. He was the guy who could roll with one hand. It took him about 3 seconds, and he'd be smoking. Oh man!
Now this is
I
sort
remember
of an
you,
age-
PJ. I'm calling you out, buddy.
he was the original Marlboro man. John
That's
Wayne
funny.
cigarettes, buddy. So yeah, I
They
mean,
should make a you know, if you can't roll a joint competition.
That's me. Do cones count? I'm a cone lady.
stuff in the cone. And with that, that is my news and pretty much what we've got for the segment for tonight, I think.
Awesome.
We got to thank each one of our guests, Todd, Shanice, Mayra, and Amber. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you guys coming out here and sharing your experience with you. Hopefully we can get you guys back for maybe episode 2 at some point.
Come back and do it again.
Thanks from the production crew too. We appreciate you. Thank you, chat. Thank you, Montana Horseman, Wayman Mitchell. Who else is in there? Lana.
Yeah, let everybody else know
Montana
they need to
Mama.
subscribe too, so they can get in on that.
Hit that
giveaway.
subscribe. Oh yeah, we're trying to give away something. The sponsors are like, hey, have you given that away yet? So please, we got to do it.
We've got this lovely little e-rig coming out to all our subscribers are going to be the ones on YouTube. So if you increase, we found out our subscribers are like 30% of our watch, and so we're trying to increase our subscribers to watch us a little bit better.
Get that Cycloud Bomb official e-rig.
Well, thank you guys all very much, and we will